typical crowd in Sarasota that's old enough to have entrenched beliefs that they use mainstream media to support, and that's the problem.
Well, you handled it super well, and it was a very interesting talk on the future. Did you catch the space shuttle launch, Elon Musk launch the other day?
I didn't see it. I mean, I've seen it subsequently. I mean, the guy just operates at a different level than, he's in Technicolor and everyone else is in black and white,
Oh, I fully agree with that.
So, I mean, I haven't looked at some of the recent streaming. Is the car in itself must be in a capsule, right? It's not just the car.
I'm not sure. I know that the car is inside the center compartment.
Yeah. Now, I just heard a noise coming in from an email.
That's fine. We could just forget about it.
I mean, that's what I was saying. If you want me to do my phone,
No.
Okay. All right.
I think we're good. So you didn't set out time to sit down and watch the launch. You're like, I'm going to watch it on my time.
I don't even. Yeah, exactly. I didn't. I mean, I'm obviously a lot older than you, and I've seen 20 rocket launches. I mean, a rocket launch is a rocket launch, right? And they look the same. This was a bigger one, I understand, but no, I've been slammed work-wise is the problem. So what can I say?
Are you giving lots of talks?
Yes, and I'm also. I found out about 3 weeks ago that something I'm involved with is doing an ICO. So I'm on a vertical learning curve of cryptocurrencies as well. And, so that in addition to landing some really big, significant speaking gigs and looking for funding for this Spaceship Earth, my nonprofit, so it's like, okay, how can I figure out to be totally rested and not sleep, right? That's the situation. So
I'm on a similar path. I just am constantly moving all day like the Energizer Bunny, trying to catch sleep when I can.
Yeah, well, I'm really impressed. Either you're accomplished beyond your years, or you have shaped a brand of yourself that does that. So congratulations on you. You live in Sarasota, right?
Oh, I'm a native. Yes, I do.
Right. So people at your age who get what you get are far and few between in this part of the world, right?
Yeah, I don't know many people that are my age that act like me. Correct.
Right, exactly. I mean, I know people your age who act like you elsewhere, but they're in Silicon Valley, or they're in some startup in Chicago or something, right? So that's why it was so nice to have you there, because it's like, see, it's like the analogy I use is when something happens that people think won't happen, it changes consciousness. So people for 30 years believed that a man could never run a 4-minute mile. And when Roger Bannister ran it, I think in 1953 at 3:59:59, he broke that. And within 6 months, 5 other people had done it, because the perception was, oh, it's doable, right? And
yeah.
and so that's what kind of you were for me in that room. You don't think I'm right? When you have somebody who goes, oh yeah, he's totally right. So I appreciate that. So anyway, so how does, 2 questions and then I'm all yours, is one, how is this syndicated? How many downloads do you get? And 2, well, I guess 3, 2, how long are we on? And 3, what do you want the theme of this podcast to be? Since you have me, I can do almost anything you want, of course.
Oh yeah. So we get, to answer number 1, we have 70,000 active listeners, and they're mostly CTOs and lead developers. And then a lot of individuals are starting a project on the side or co-founding some technology company, and they listen in to hear experiences, and we have them on as well. So those are kind of the three segments, large segments of the audience. And I've already forgotten question two and three. Oh, two, we're already in the podcast.
So 70,000, that's a good number. You must be happy with that.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, of course. I mean, I I just talk to people and see what they want to hear about, and I engage with the audience. And my goal is, I've got two goals. One goal is to bring the previous version of myself value. Like, I've been going at this for a long time, right? I've been writing code for 17 years, and it's my dad taught me when I was a small child. And from then on, all I wanted to do was, write code, build applications, and make money. And that's kind of like my whole life. So I want, if I could go back and give myself advice, it would essentially be this podcast. Right? Like, here's the mistakes to avoid, and here's what to look for. And so what I realized is that technology isn't slowing down, it's speeding up. So while there was maybe 1 in 1,000 or 1 in 10,000 of me then, 20 years ago, there is probably 100 in 1,000 or 200 in 1,000 now. So there's a lot more of those individuals looking
Right.
to get into technology and do business and stuff like that at a younger age. That audience is growing. So I said, all right, well, why don't I just, bring them value and help them out? And at the same time, I'm a big nerd and I like to talk to other cool people that are smart. And so I need an excuse to talk to them. So let's build a
Right.
media platform.
That's always a good reason. So then now I have three questions still because I just have another one. So
Yeah.
how long will this podcast be, and what's the general theme that you want this podcast to be with me, knowing that we can do more if needed or whatever.
Yeah, so they usually run 30 minutes, and this is the theme. This is me and you talking. So we're actually already 6 minutes into the podcast.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and we edit it up. We slice it up. So we have a fantastic team here that produces the podcast. There's 5 of us, and we go through and we edit up and make the vocals sound really good and clip the different parts to make us sound really smart. And it's a real positive thing. So
Okay, so I have a question for you.
yeah,
If I could just ask it before I forget.
yeah,
You said you've been coding for 17 years.
right.
So as a futurist, I've been doing a deep dive the last few years into what is currently called artificial intelligence, and I certainly want to talk about that. But the developing view is that machines will self-code within 10 years, more or less. I am getting asked the question. In fact, I just did a long interview yesterday with a media outlet in Canada, and the question was, the Canadian government's going to invest $50 million to teach young people, particularly girls, how to code. And what do I think of that? My comment was, they're not preparing. By the time these kids get out of high school or college, coding will not be a profession that they can make money. Rather, it will be a skill they can use on their own for their own websites, similar to in the 50s and 60s. If you were a woman then and you learned how to type, you could make a living typing. But now it's a skill. Am I correct in that increasingly machine learning will self-code itself so that the number of coders will go down relative to a professional job?
Yeah, I think the analogy to a typer is actually a really strong one, because it was a full-time job and like an isolated thing. The one thing you do is
the
transcribe.
secretarial pool was called after World War II, right?
Yeah. So I had Peter Cooper on yesterday, and he's Peter Cooper of Cooper Press. So they have the largest like publication of developers, and it's like developers read their newsletters, their email newsletters. And so he's really bright. And we had this conversation that it's going to be like that. Programming is going to be a skill like in your tool belt of a thing you can do built around something else larger. To answer your first question about the machine learning or the artificial intelligence, we are every single day we take one step closer towards the machines writing their own code autonomously.
Okay. So,
Right.
so for example, if if you were at the age now that you were then when you started coding, you would be learning to code not so much as you said to make money, but to learn a skill that is a movable feast that you can take with you wherever you go to do what you want, if not necessarily be well paid to do it, right?
Correct. It'll be like commoditized and more
Yes.
like a construction worker, where as it's the person laying the blocks. Yeah, we have machines building buildings now, and we also have people still building buildings. And I think code will look a lot like that too. You'll have code writing code, and you'll have people writing code, but it won't be the same glamorous thing it was the past 20 years.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So I've been right. In other words, it's just kind of like politicians talking about STEM education, and we don't need STEM anymore. We need education to teach young people to think creatively in a design manner. You go, graduates today are told, college graduates, in your lifetime, you're going to have 3 to 5 careers, 2 or 3 of which have yet to be invented. So how can you possibly teach somebody a career any longer, right?
Well, that's actually on my notes here of one of the things that stuck with me the most about listening to your talk. It's so backwards that we say we're going to go through K through 12, and we have the information that you're going to need for the rest of your life mapped out in these 12 years. When we turn around, and our analysts, our best technology people in the world can not even accurately predict out 5 to 8 years. You can do the macro, right? You can do macro predictions, but you can't predict like super micro things.
Yeah, no, the smaller you get, the higher the variable for the outcome, right?
Right.
So I don't know, did you ever read the Foundation trilogy by Isaac Asimov?
No,
If
I haven't.
if not, you should. It's the foundation of modern science fiction, really. And the whole concept was psychohistory, that this mathematician using masses, at the time, billions of people as an aggregate, he could mathematically predict what would happen, but take it down to an individual, and he couldn't, right? So, for example, um, I am very proud, and I stand on this statement that my job is to be extremely accurate up to 5 years out, and directionally fairly accurate 10 to 15 years out. So that's what I do, and all my forecasts are on my website. I'm one of the only futurists I know that has put up what I forecast and when I did it. And then I'm writing a column that I posted this week about 2018, and I had to say, what I just said to you, and that, but when you come closer in, there's more variability. Donald Trump could do one thing, or somebody could do one thing that would change an equation, but over 10 years, 10 million people, I'll be accurate. So you're exactly right.
And isn't that how data works, period?
Yes. And that's the other thing. I don't know who's interviewing who here. Do you want me to shut up and start over? Or what do you want to
No,
do?
just keep going. This is
Okay.
just a conversation. Yeah.
So I also now say that I want to get into the conversation of artificial intelligence in a big way, but the transition to that, I say that in the future, now, from this point on, data will rule, because data is available in the magnitude that has never been before, so that what humans are, when somebody says, when a CEO says to a VP of the company, just give me the facts, um, that would be a human with all the subjectivity, with points of view, providing what they think are the facts. If the machine learning is initially programmed correctly, it will just give you the data, which is the fundamental underpinnings of what is perceived as facts. So we've taken away a layer of interpretation just by moving to machine intelligence.
Yeah. I loved your graph about the data explosion.
Oh yeah, right.
It's
So
insane.
just to say it, in 2010, humanity created 1.8 zettabytes of data, a zettabyte being a billion terabytes. And in 2040, it will be 12,000. So we're moving from 1.8 to 12,000 in 30 years.
Wow. It was
Right.
interesting when you were talking about the the data and how the Asimov book about how you could predict things with large sets of data, what ran through my mind was I was blown away when I found this out. I have a friend who is a fire chief locally, right?
Uh-huh.
And he was talking to me. He was showing me their systems that the emergency services use is really, really cool, like their custom systems they built. And we were talking, it's very predictable to emergency services, whether it's police and crime or fires and firefighters or accidents and ambulances, on a scale of a city, of when these things are going to happen. Like, this is something that's been around for them for a long time. They've always been able to predict and staff based on the time of year and days and everything about how many incidents occur.
Exactly. I mean, you always, as a futurist and as a CTO, you and I tend to use movies, for example. So what you just said is what is the current reality to what Minority Report was all about.
Right.
You know,
we're moving towards that every day.
Absolutely, and so can I go off on a big thought about? Okay, so so it's here we are in February 2018. Just about 2 years ago, I really got frustrated by the stupidity and the simple dual conversation about artificial intelligence. Oh, robotic overlords or not, it's good or it's bad. And it was for something that's so transformative to me, it was the ultimately stupid conversation. So here's what I did, and I do this in every presentation, and I think I probably did it in the one that you saw. I went to 5 dictionaries and I looked up the definition of the word intelligence. And in none of the dictionaries was the word human part of the definition, which means that intelligence is intelligence. Dolphins are intelligence. Whales are intelligence. People always tell me how intelligent their pets are. So I've said that the next 20 years is the age of intelligence. So the reason I think, and I'm using the word AI, and use the word AI because it has become the name of this loose thing. But I believe that the reason humanity, has started using the phrase artificial intelligence is that artificial diminishes the intelligence. Like, it's not human, it's artificial as compared to us. And yet intelligence is never defined as being of humanness. Therefore, the reason we use artificial intelligence is that we, humanity, and you being younger and much more adaptive, have to look to the people who are in that room, right? That humanity, we are the first iteration of humanity to have to psychologically adapt to an equal or superior intelligence cohabiting the planet with us. And because that is so psychologically disturbing, because it's never happened in history, we have to diminish it by calling it artificial. So what I say is that within a few years, the word artificial is going to drop away. I'm going to try to lead that. It is machine learning. It is deep learning. Doesn't have anything to do with artificial, because Lex's intelligence is not artificial. It's intelligence. It may be at a low level, but it's nevertheless intelligence. It's not artificial. So the whole phrase artificial intelligence to me represents the deep psychological disturbance in many people, that there will be an intelligence smarter than them that is not of a carbon life form.
Well, that's really important, because we're anthropomorphic by nature. So we're imagining that these aliens would be these other breathing carbon life forms that are strutting around and
in humanoid figures, right?
Yeah, in humanoid figures, right? Similar to us, right? Because that's what that means. So right. The act of shifting, it actually, I just did it in my head and it made me feel a little uncomfortable, because it's like, if you shift that same thought to like just replace those aliens with the technology, and just imagine that the silicon, like the computer systems, like the electronics, are the invasion, then it's like really kind of creepy, because you just feel almost a little gross, because like you look around your room and you're like, ooh, you look at how you spend your time, I always like to think if an alien species like that was carbon that like came and was hovering over Earth, right? Over Earth watching us, they would think that these screens are our gods because we look like we worship them 24 hours a day.
Well, okay, so one thing about that, ever since I was a teenager, I have said this, and I still say it, and it's like I'm surprised that people have never heard this before, right? I said the other night at a lecture I was giving, I said if an alien form uh, flew across the United States at 10,000 feet and they didn't know anything about Earth, they would assume that the car is the dominant life form because the whole landscape was created around the car, right? You
Right.
know, so people say to me as a futurist, Joel, that I connect the dots that other people can't see. So let me connect 3 dots for you to come up with a punchline. Dot number one is the book Origin, which is Dan Brown's latest book. You probably haven't read it. Have you read any of Dan Brown's works?
No.
No. Okay. So the reason I had to read it, the protagonist is a futurist, and one of the main characters is an artificial intelligence, right? And the end of that book basically shows that entropy is the law of the universe. So humanity is going to give over to technology, which is an ascendancy. So I'm reading that book. Then I'm a huge um, um, uh, I just blanked on the name, a Blade Runner fan, and Blade Runner 49 I saw around the same time I was reading the book, and Blade Runner 2049, the plot is based on Blade Runner, where a human made love to a replicant, and evidently the replicant gave birth. So that means, so we may have robots that we can breed with in the future, and and uh, then the third data point comes from my having written the book This Spaceship Earth about climate change. 150 species a day right now on the planet are becoming extinct, a lot of that being insects and plants. Nevertheless, 150 species a day are becoming extinct. That is a rate that is 10,000, the average norm of the last few centuries. So we are creating our sixth extinction. So we don't seem to care, right? Humans don't seem to care that the tigers have gone away, the giraffes are going away, the condors, we don't care. So my joke is, so what if artificial intelligence takes over our species? Karma's a bitch,
Yeah.
So, I say that in jest, but in reality, what if that happens? And I always say, the other thing I want to say, this is really important to anybody listening. I always get asked the question about whether this technology, this handheld, iPhone or whatever technology is good or bad. I don't think it's a good technology. The bottom line is technology is always morally neutral. Technology is never good or bad, with the possible exception of creating weapons for warfare. It's how people use it. A plane shortens distance, but a plane can drop bombs. So the real danger in machine learning is the manipulation of humans by other humans, not in the intelligence itself.
Yeah. It's like, oh, yes. I don't know what to say to that.
Right. Well, but I think a lot of people don't understand that, right? They think that, when I'm a baby boomer, so I was of the TV generation, and at that time, my parents were of the radio and newspaper generation. So it was called the boob tube. So I could only watch an hour a day, and after I had my homework done. Any baby boomer will tell you a similar story. And now, what are we having? We're having parents saying, there's too much screen time on your phone, right?
Yeah.
So whenever there's a new technology, people look at it from a historical point of view, right? So ever since the boob tube came into being in the 50s, the average IQ of America has gone up, right? So that's always the issue: is The other thing I think is what technology did you grow up with? The computer, right? Pretty much.
Yeah.
Okay. So David's personal theory is that the dominant technology in your life, in anyone's life, will be the technology that most impacted you up to the age of 21. So for boomers, it's TV. For my 31-year-old son, it's the computer and the laptop. For younger people, like I see at Ringling, it's the handheld device. So each generation has its new primary technology. And obviously, now that the millennials and digital natives are in ascendancy, the handheld device has won. It is the dominant screen in the world today.
Yeah.
So,
No, and then I've also, it's interesting too, because now you can subdivide on the physical devices, and now it allows them to actually subdivide the generations through the apps. So they can actually do it faster. Like
yeah,
before, you'd have the TV or the radio, and then the computer, and then the handheld computer. But now you can actually do it by apps. You can say, okay, well, Instagram is this generation, Snapchat is this generation. So it allows them to actually, they don't have to go, a 13-year-old can actually write the platform for their generation. Like
right.
because they can distribute it, they solve the problem of distribution. You can just put it on the app store. All you have to do, you could basically do it free. You just have to have a device and an account, and you put the app on the app store, and then the market gets to speak. So you can generate those platforms now without having to go actually manufacture all the machines like Apple and Microsoft did.
Right. That's exactly right. And I always, I give speeches around the world to different groups, for the, manufacturing or service organizations or medical or education. And whenever I'm speaking to an industry that is sales oriented and distribution channel oriented, our sales distribution channels, I kind of say to them, I hold up my iPhone 6 Plus and I go, this is the only channel. You talk about these constructed channels. If you're not interfacing with your customer on this, you're not embracing the present, right?
I fully agree. And then I'm gonna assign a task for you.
Okay.
Just because you're a futurist, you got to go bump the upgrade to the X.
Okay. Sure. No problem.
Right? I actually did that 2 days ago, because everyone, it's weird. It's now that I have the show and I'm like talking to people, everyone's like, "Oh, you don't have the X yet? Oh, you don't have the X yet?" And they're like, all my friends and family. I had a birthday party, and everyone's like, "How do you not have the X? You're Joel. You're the technology guy." And
I
so
get the same thing. So I want to hear how you answer that, because I have a clear answer. Go ahead.
oh, well, I say that I don't waste my money. Like the software upgrades, and I have essentially the same features, so I need to
Okay.
spend the money.
So my history is I always buy one generation behind, right? So
Hmm.
when the 7 came out, I then bought the 6. Why? The functionality isn't that different and the price is much less. So that's
Hmm.
number one. Number two, with the possible exception of you and some of the people who listen to the podcast, most people in the world do not use all the functionality that they carry in their hand. They're doing email and they're doing a limited number of things,
Hmm.
you know, and so therefore, if you have a piece of technology that is more than good enough for whatever you want to use it, or it is better than what you use it for, why would you buy something new?
Right.
It doesn't make any sense. And the problem I have with Apple, on the one hand, they're a dynamic company and they're going to be carbon neutral relative to their whole footprint on Earth. On the other hand, they've brought back planned obsolescence. Like in the 50s, you had to buy a car every 2 years. Why do you have to get a phone? I'm never going to get the 10. And the reason I'm never going to get the 10, because the 10 has already failed. They've come out with cheaper versions. You know this. And so when people say, why don't you have the newest technology? It's because I don't need it. To you? In other words, the first, I'd say from iPhone 1 through iPhone 7, there was distinct improvement. At this point in time, any improvement on smartphones is diminished. Each generation had a lot of features worth doing. I don't, at this point in time with the The one thing I will say is the large screen is one. I have a 6 Plus.
Yep.
I could not. I always ask somebody who has a smaller screen, why do you have a smaller screen? Well, it's big enough. I go, the 6 Plus, the only reason I wondered if it was too big is it wouldn't fit in my blue jean pocket, and it did. So it wasn't too big.
Oh,
And
nice.
right. What do you do on a phone? Now I'm talking to an older generation, not necessarily to someone your age, but somebody say, certainly over the age of 40. What do you do on your phone? You read, you watch videos, and you text, all three of which are improved by having a larger surface. Why would you not have a larger surface? Right? And,
Right.
that's the only thing that I would argue. Anybody who doesn't have a large, I went to China in 2015. Not only do they have our asses whooped in terms of high speed. I mean, I was on the Shanghai subway just to take it, and
Mhm.
people were watching high def movies live streaming
Oh, yeah.
in the subway, right? And the other thing was they all had large phones. They had phones that are bigger than the 6, right? You know,
Right.
some of the Chinese phones are like 7 inches. They're almost as big as the iPad Mini.
Yeah, my sister just moved back to Sarasota from Shenzhen, China.
Oh, really?
Yeah, she was there teaching English for 4 or 5 years.
And what did she have to say upon her return? Thank God I'm home, or what?
No, she adapted pretty well.
Mhm.
She kind of explained the differences, and uh, I mean, she's happy to be home because all our family's all in Sarasota, so she was happy from that. But she definitely enjoyed China. It's very different over there. Like, for example, one day she was telling me there's like a neighborhood rioting, and the government controls the buildings. So because they were like protesting in the streets or whatever the situation was, they just shut off all the power and water to their homes until they went back and stopped bothering the government.
Well, that's like getting in a hotel room and you say, and you log on to the Wi-Fi in the hotel, and the first thing that comes up is you may not be able to get Google, Facebook, Twitter, you know.
Oh,
But here's the thing that's odd about the Chinese. They have one foot in the past and one foot in the future. I was at the Shanghai train station, ready to take a high-speed train down to Beijing, with the person who was my handler there because I was giving speeches and a book tour. And so it's the biggest, most modern train station I have ever seen. 240 trains go in and out of there a day, and 75% of them go 300 kilometers an hour, right? So then, because of some aid, I say to my traveling companion, let me go to the bathroom one more time, So I go into the men's room to go into a stall. And it's one of these stalls circa 200 years ago with two places to put your feet and a hole,
yeah.
right? So you pull your pants down and you squat. And this is simultaneously occurrence. And then I walk back out into the, the most modern train station I've ever seen. That's China, right?
Right. That's super interesting because
Yeah,
because their culture. Like, it's okay.
yeah,
Right. Like
right.
that's how it would work. My sister would tell me that's the thing she likes the most about here is that the they all the restaurants have bathrooms that are bathrooms. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, it's
So
odd.
what's your view on voice and Alexa? Do you have one? Do you have
Yes.
a
Yeah. I'm a high level trend guy. So I've been speaking about what I'm about to tell you for 10 years.
Mhm.
Um, I, the human computer interface first began when the computer was in a big air conditioned room, and there are people who wore lab coats, white lab coats. They're called computer operators. And there are people sitting in cubicles right outside who were programmers, and then there were systems analysts. And that obviously morphed with the personal computer to us keyboarding as the interface with our computers. We use a keyboard. And then the next thing was touch when the iPhone came out. So touch interface, touch screen interface, and then Alexa and and Siri and all the ones like that is voice interface, which has yet to be fully mastered with the computer, but it's almost there, as you know.
Mhm.
And so what I've been talking about for 10 years is brainwave computer interface, because that's the next thing. it's still in research laboratories, but basically, you put on a cap, the sensors of which pick up your brain waves, and you you give an intentional thought to the computer, and it performs.
Right.
So by 2025, that'll be out into the marketplace easily. Brainwave computer
I can
interface,
buy an SDK right now that lets me do it.
STK.
Yeah, I could buy it's a thing you put on your head and it can do
What's it
basic
called?
things.
What does STK stand for?
Software development kit. So I
Okay,
can buy it's a device that goes onto your head
right.
and it comes with an SDK, which is basically I sit there and I've got meters on the screen and I'm thinking jump, 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 and it's showing me the activations of my brain that are jumped. And then I kind of group that data and I make that my jump command. Then I think run, 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 and I group that data, I make my run command. Then I can go build a little game where I have a character on the screen, and as I'm thinking jump, the character is jumping, and as I'm thinking run, the character is running.
Could I do this without having any of your coding skills?
No, there's a company that gave a TED talk that actually has a TED talk of this happening. They just pick a person out of the audience and they have them do this. They go up on
But
stage, they put the thing on their head, and they have the video game set up, and yeah.
is there a way that you could send me a link to get
Yeah.
one of the quote things?
Yeah, I think they're like $500-700. You can get a basic one, and then it might even come with that game I was describing.
Yeah, well, the reason I want to do it is because since I've been talking about it for 10 years, I'd like to experience it, number one.
Yeah.
I'd like to develop the capability in my mind to do it. And number three, of course, how powerful would that be? Like if I did that during the presentation that we met at, right?
Right.
I mean,
That would be insane. Yeah.
it would be a presentational thing. Now I'm going to do this. And there isn't anybody except people who are of your ilk of develops sense of awareness in technology and computers that wouldn't be blown away by that.
No, when I saw it, I was just absolutely floored and pumped at the same time.
Yeah, no, so sometime in fall, please send me anything. I mean, I can go search, but I'm not exactly sure what I'm searching for. So if you could send me an email that has links, or you might want to look at this, I'm all in. Thank you.
What you should do is I'll give you the company. You should go out and take time to go meet with them, because they would love to.
Right.
We like to have guests come in and all technology people, like a fun day. It would be cool to have this person come in that's going to then put on our device for our company and go around and talk around the world. I mean, that's value to both parties involved, right? So you go there. Yeah. And then you would talk with them. They would set you up with the device in the game, and you guys would learn how to use it. Then you just integrate it into your talks, and they would be super pumped for that, I'm sure.
That would be great. Would you send me? I don't want to take the time to write it all down now or take the airtime. Send me all that data, and I'll be on it. That's great. I mean, I use props when I speak, and here's another concept I think you heard me talk about. And I've talked about this since 2008, once the iPhone was out. And I said that everybody now, for the first time in history, has two realities: a physical reality based on atoms and a screen reality based on digits. And that because the screen reality based on digits can morph more quickly than atoms can, the change that comes in the future starts on the screen. So, then I walk to one side of the stage and I hold up my phone. I go, or I don't hold up my phone, and I say, why is it over here in physical retail that malls are closing one a week, the big box stores are shutting down, the strip malls are empty? And I go to the other side of the stage and I hold up because of something on the screen reality called Amazon.com. And then you go to Uber, and then you go to Airbnb. So the reality that's being created on the screen is rearranging the physical reality. And when people get that concept, it blows their mind. Normally, they just think, okay, your physical reality is that you're listening to me. Your screen reality is what's going on in your world outside this room where you're listening to me. And we're the first iteration. That didn't exist until 10 years ago, right? There was only the singular reality. Now there's the dual reality. And the other thing is because there's 7.5 billion people on the planet, 6.2 billion have cell phones. So more people have cell phones than have indoor plumbing or indoor electricity, which means there's cell phone ubiquity. which means there is no time, distance, or place limiting human communication. So the whole concept of communication, which was entirely place-based, right? You know, when your parents were growing up, they had a phone in the office and a phone at home. So you had to be in a place to take a phone call. Now you don't. So the concept of place has been totally separated from the concept of communication, which is a fundamental change in consciousness.
Yeah, and then, you know, oh man, this is so good.
We can do this again.
Yeah.
I'm having too much fun as well.
So here's a few points that cropped up that you might be able to integrate in your stuff or might find interesting. So having actually written some machine learning code, uh, I have some experience with this, right? One
I'm
of the things
impressed. I'm impressed.
So one of the things that we are actually lacking on right now, everyone says, you know, oh, the AI concept or what they imagine, the general public imagines AI as like a human that can just be a human, which is so
Oh,
interesting to me. But
God, I'm
anyways,
tired of that.
they say it's so far out until that happens. It's gonna be forever until that happens. And then they don't realize that what the machine learning algorithms can do today are severely limited by processing power. So we're sitting around waiting for processing power. For me to train a machine learning model on something ultra basic right now could take a couple days, right? I have to run it, and it could take a couple days on a normal computer. If I pay for a cloud systems where I can have multiple processing and multiple computers at the same time. It still takes a long time for me to train on a relatively simple task. Those same principles, we could train it on larger tasks, but the life cycle of the training is so drawn out right now because of the limitations of the processor. So what's going to happen is we're actually ahead of the hardware right now and what we can do. And when we start getting to that point where the hardware is catching up, and we're going to be able to do insane things with machine learning.
Well, I have a question there. You know, I give talks with a guy who used to be at IBM.
Mm-hmm.
We're called the AI guys. And, you know, I'd love for anybody who is listening to book us. I mean, we basically take the high conceptual levels of AI and translate it into the business community. What you need to know about this. And here's the context, right? But so we reference Watson a lot. Watson is different, is the Watson and supercomputers like that is an exception to what you just said or not?
Oh, it's not an exception to what they're still like,
They're still slow. Okay.
oh yeah,
So let me ask you a question. I'm connecting two things. What you just said, we're ahead of the hardware. That's a brilliant statement.
yeah.
So we'll and sometime, and I'd like your thought on this, sometime within 5 years, maybe 10 years for absolutely sure, quantum computing will really take hold. And the way I've researched it, I'm told that quantum computing can increase computer speed by 100,000 times. Is that, and so one, is that correct? Two, is, uh, will that be the transformative moment relative to machine learning?
I don't know if about the specifics of the hardware and if the quantum computers will be the big change. But here's what I do know. I do know that I have been a geek about this type of stuff my whole life, about how people learn and also technology. And now that I have a 5-month-old daughter and I'm with all my experience in
Congratulations,
technology.
right? I forgot to congratulate
Oh,
you on that.
thank you. So now I'm watching her and I'm thinking about life and I'm thinking about all the technology. And what I'm seeing is something very, very, very clear. All you can do in life is really try things, take the best things that work, learn from them, have that experience, move forward, try something else, and then pay attention to what's happening in your environment. So it's all these, like, we're very basic humans, and like everything is very basic and simple on one perspective. So when you think about a machine learning system, you think, well, if you had the same processing power as a brain, right, and you could accept all the input and accept as a as the brain as a whole, both conscious and unconscious. If you had that processing power, all you would really have to do is make a machine learning algorithm that just try things, takes what it's like, learns from it, processes it, creates a experience, understands the experience, moves. I mean, it's not that difficult. What's difficult is the scale of data and input that you need and the processing
Okay.
power that you need.
So the apps of programming is not, it's the programming and funneling enough data in, is what you're saying, right?
It's all coming down to processing power.
So, okay. And what do you think is when will there be a processing breakthrough, and what will it be?
Well, I think we're inside of an exponential processing breakthrough because every time we have very fast computers compared to 20 years ago, clearly. And then it's our fast computers that then learn with us and that can create the faster computers. Like you could create a microchip in 1980s with, basic tools, right? Or the 70s with basic tools. But now they're like these high performance lasers that only these like highly programmed, very exact machines can create, right? So
Okay.
as our technology gets better, we can create better performing technology. It's like we're basically rapidly iterating through technology generations inside of technology way faster than humans iterate. I mean, we take, a whole human generation to iterate, and we can iterate technology very, very fast. Now that we started to build these machine learning tools that are very intelligent, or it's very, we have the processing power at the rate we do right now, then we're going to be able to create better electronics. And I think it's just going to happen exponentially in small iterative cycles. And there'll be a little breakthrough here. There'll be a little breakthrough there. There'll be a little, and it'll just stack up just like everything else in life.
So what I've said is that even though the underpinnings of artificial intelligence, staying with that term, have been around for decades, it's only really in the last 3 years that the possibilities have started to manifest themselves. And what you just said means that within another 3 to 5 years, it will become absolutely unstoppable on almost any metric.
Yeah, it already is. Technology is so distributed and available. It's already unstoppable. Like
Right.
we're over the hump now. But like one thing uh, that would be cool to look at for you would be graphene computers. Graphene's been made like a big talk in both, I believe, the transfer of electricity as in reworking the power line system and
Right.
both, or I think that's like nanotubes. I'm not sure, but there's a big thing going on at, University of Texas, Dallas, and I think UCF, but check out graphene computers because that looks to
Graphene,
be,
PH, graphene,
yeah, Graphene.
GRA.
Phene.
Yeah, okay, yeah, graphene, right,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah.
Graphene computers. So those have a huge potential to be,
Yeah, well,
1,000 times faster and use less power.
right. Those are game processors to some degree, right?
I'm not sure if they're just in labs right now
No, but
or
I mean, the processors used for computers that are built for gaming have graphic processors. Graphing processors is what I thought.
oh no, so graphene is the
Graphene, I'm sorry, INE, right. Sorry, got it.
yeah,
Understood. I got it. I just misunderstood the word. Okay.
yeah, it's
Yeah,
a material. It's like
yeah,
a
no, I
like
got
a carbon or something. Yeah.
it's super thin, right?
Yeah.
Um, so I want to come back briefly, and then I don't know how much time we have, but I have one big concept to say
Yeah,
for
let's do
you.
your last big concept and then wrap up because we're already 20 minutes over.
Oh, really? Well, you can edit it down.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
but the quote of machine learning relative. So real quickly, the quote of machine learning that I always use that relates to your daughter. The definition of machine learning: quote, the ability of a machine to improve its performance based on previous results. And then I turn to the audience and I say, how does a 1-year-old learn how to walk? Same thing, right? So here's the big concept that I hope you can keep in, which is no, and I didn't see the numbers in the screen; they went away, so it's my fault. Artificial intelligence is the single greatest technological invention since electricity in terms of how it will transform how humanity lives. Obviously, when electricity came in, it ended up lighting up the night. It air conditioned the desert. It made something other than the stove able to cook things in the kitchen, whether it be toast, coffee, or microwave popcorn, right? But
Mm-hmm.
so accept that as a parallel. I think it's very valid because there's no, I mean, all of a sudden there were cities, all of a sudden there was night, all of a sudden there was air conditioning. But all those things were invented after electricity was discovered or invented, right?
Right.
So when electricity was invented, the smartest people following it probably said, oh, that means I'll be able to work or do things at night because it will light up the night. They didn't see air conditioning. They didn't see global electronic communications because it only developed afterwards. So the issue I try to get through to people today is right now we see artificial intelligence as solving problems more quickly and putting people out of work. But we have no idea what might happen to humanity and technology and the world after artificial intelligence fully, you know, becomes as dominant and influential as it will be in the 2020s. So I ask people to think about that. When electricity was invented, nobody even had the concept of air conditioning. When electricity was invented, nobody had the concept of a television set. When electricity was invented, nobody had a concept of electric transportation. So we don't know what artificial intelligence is going to provide us after we've assimilated it or we've assimilated with it going forward. So there is no real way to talk about artificial intelligence and its consequences except to imagine.
Are you there?
I'm here. Did you drop?
Okay.
Did I drop off?
Yeah, except to what?
Except to imagine.
Yeah.
In other words, there's no, oh, artificial intelligence can get rid of jobs, right? You know, it's like
Yeah.
saying, oh, electricity is going to get rid of candles.
Right.
So I've loved this. I'm sorry I went
Yeah.
over.
No, no worries at all. It was
Okay.
a fantastic conversation. I super appreciate your time and talk with us about the future. You're awesome, David.
Well, you're awesome too, as well. And particularly
Yeah.
when I know that you're really only 7 years old, it's amazing, you know.
Yes.
He's older than that, folks, but relative to the room where he and I met, he was less than half the age of the average age of that room.
Oh yeah, I was definitely. Uh, yep, it's good though. But that's who I hang out with though. I mean, I keep those people around. Because they have lots of experience, and I like to leverage that to get ahead. So.
Right. Well, several things. One, send me this link when you've edited it and posted it, and I'll
Mm-hmm.
push it out.
Yep.
Yeah. Number two, send me that information about the brainwave, computer thing. I think that's fascinating. And three, I just think that